we're going to talk about that today. Okay, so first I want to share with you that there was a man, and he was a very greedy man, a very stingy man, and his whole world was about making money and keeping all of his money. His love of money was the most important thing to him. And so he told his wife, now listen, when I die, I want you to promise me that you will put all of my money into the casket with me. And he pressed her and pushed her until he knew that she was sincere in her heart and that she would do this. So years go by, he passes away, and so she and her best friend are at his funeral. The eulogy is done, and they're getting ready to close the casket. And she says, oh, wait a minute. So she grabs this shoebox, and she goes and she puts this in the casket. They close the casket, and they take it away. And her friend said, oh, wait a second. You did not just put all of his money into the casket. And she said, well, yes, I did. I'm a Christian woman. And I told him that I would do this. And so I absolutely did. And she said, no way. You were not crazy enough to put every cent in there. And she said, yes, I did. I went and I gathered up all the money and I put it in my account and I wrote him a check. Ba-dum-bump. Okay, so last week I dared us to become the healthiest that we've ever been. I dared us to move into a place of financial freedom. I dared us to be the best version of ourselves that we could possibly be. I dared us to have loving relationships. And so today I'm daring us to live an abundant life. And I was guided to a book called The Art of Happiness, 10 Rules for a Prosperous Life by Dennis Merritt Jones. And so I want to tell you, I'm going to be sharing a lot of his words with you today. So I'm telling you ahead of time I'm plagiarizing, but I'm not really plagiarizing because I'm telling you that I'm going to be sharing his words. So, and a lot of this, some of this is going to be kind of heady today. But the reason is to get us into our heart space, is so that we can really hopefully shift what we're looking at and look at the bigger picture here. Now, Peter Diamandis said, when I think about creating abundance, it's not about creating a life of luxury for everybody on this planet. It's about creating a life of possibility. It's about taking what is scarce and making it abundant. So Dennis Jones says, you know, the world really doesn't need another book, another self-help book, another how to become rich book. That really what the world needs is a new perspective regarding what really gives meaning and value to life, and to recognize that everyone strives for essentially the same thing. And no, it isn't money, and it's not material things. It's something that's far less tangible but far more rewarding than that. He said, behind every thought, deed, and action of every human being of rational mind, I like that, of rational mind on this planet, is the desire for freedom, inner peace, and a life worth living, a life that is filled with purpose and meaning, a life of fulfillment and wholeness. And would we agree with that? You know, that's really what underlies really our deepest desires for anything that is outside of us, is that we desire freedom, we desire to have purpose and meaning, we desire to have inner peace and to have joy in our lives. But he said, however, for the majority of the 7 billion people who live on the planet, this type of life seems almost impossible for us to conceive that we can really have that. And today is really about shifting to a place where we know that we already live and move and have our being in whatever it is that we are truly desiring. And he said, instead, we hold the erroneous belief that money and material things, that is what is going to really bring about the life that we desire. And I'm going to tell you that I absolutely was that person, especially when I was in a place when I didn't have money. And so what I want to say here is that, you know, money and material things, they're great. And they add happiness to our lives. and that the deeper reality is it was never about that to begin with, that it's about something that's far greater and far deeper than the things that are added unto us. So he said that if you sit with this idea for a little bit, you may find that there's some truth in that for you as well. He goes on to say that every single one of us dwells in the greater possibility, greater abundance, that we can have a more abundant life. And I'm going to share with you what the difference is, because there's a difference between abundance and prosperity. Abundance precedes prosperity. So he says abundance is an extremely plentiful or over sufficient quantity or supply and overflowing fullness. And he said, note here that this definition doesn't specify form, it's only a degree that implies that there is more than enough, because abundance is principle. Prosperity isn't the principle. Abundance is a principle, and a principle is something that is always. It was, is, and will always be. And it's an absolute potential in every single one of us. And I want us all to really get that this abundance, it's actually our natural state. It's who and what we actually are. And again, ours is to begin to focus from that place. Now, Dr. Roger Teal says that abundance is the infinite life energy, the life intelligence, the potential of the divine that we live and move and have our being in. That is true abundance, you guys. True abundance is the recognition of God as our source, of source is our source, of the Holy Spirit, however you want to say it. It's the recognition that we live and move and have our being in this divine source and in this divine intelligence. Prosperity is how much of that are we allowing to flow into our life and materialize. So prosperity is kind of the outer, where abundance and abundance consciousness is the inner realm for us. He says prosperity is a successful, flourishing, or thriving condition. In other words, prosperity is a condition, not a principle. It is the effect or the manifestation of abundance materializing in a specific form or condition and degree. So abundance is the principle, and prosperity is the materialization of how we are focusing in that realm of abundance. He goes on to say that the inclination of most people, and I think it's true, is to think of prosperity as money and possessions, which that's part of it. But when we're talking about prosperity, and this is where I want us to really shift, we're not talking about just money and possessions. We're talking about a prosperity of health, a prosperity of wonderful, loving relationships and friendships, a prosperity of inner peace and joy. And how many of us would love to have a prosperity and abundance of time to enjoy everything? Yes? And I want to tell you that you do have it. You already have it. It's just something in our consciousness, something in our belief that keeps us thinking we don't have the time that we really desire. So abundance is the causative principle, and prosperity, and I love how he says this, is the exquisite effect. Abundance consciousness is the cause, prosperity is the exquisite effect. So in his book, these 10 rules for abundance, they are: be one with life, be aware that you live in an expanding universe, be accountable for your consciousness, be focused, be in the flow, be passionate, be blessed, be of service, be courageous, and be a catalyst for good. So this is really like the new Beatitudes, right? Yeah, so it's going to be our Beatitudes for an abundance consciousness, an abundance experience. Rule number 1, be one with life. And in every chapter, he tells you what the payoff of that is. And so he says the payoff of mastering rule number 1, be one with life, is freedom. And how many of us just want to feel like we're experiencing freedom in every area of our life? Yes? And one of the things that I think about with this is that I think for all of us, there are some areas of our life that just naturally flow. You know, for some people, financial prosperity, it is a given. For some people, great health is a given. For some people, having just beautiful, loving relationships, it's a given, or always falling into the next right job or whatever. And I think for most of us, there are these areas that we kind of feel like we hit the wall with it all the time, like we're kind of having a different experience of the same thing. And so what this series is going to really be about is helping us to move past those blocks. And I'm going to tell you something, it's simply consciousness that is blocking us, but it's unconscious. We're not really conscious of our consciousness. We're not really conscious of what is playing in our minds most of the time. And so this is really going to take some effort, right? Is it worth the effort? Yes. It is absolutely worth the effort. So he says that as our awareness of the universe deepens, we're going to be able to start seeing through new eyes, and we're going to see that everywhere that we look, this is a part of what we're going to be called to do, especially this week for our homework. We're going to see abundance everywhere. We're going to start really opening up and seeing it and receiving it and celebrating the abundance that is all around us all the time. He said the source of one's good is the universe in which we live, is God in which we live, an infinite well of more than enough that knows nothing about lack or limitation, where the potential for everything exists. And the reality is we forget to be focused on that. I've shared this before, but it was so profound to me that when my husband Sean, right, the day leading up to the night when he passed away, in hindsight, what I know is that he was really in both realms. He was seeing things that I wasn't seeing, and he would sit there and he would say, honey, do you see this energy? And I couldn't see anything. And at one point, he was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden he just started looking around, and he's like, oh my gosh, people have no idea what's all around them. And it was so, especially in hindsight, because that's when I recognized he was literally in both realms, that he saw the potential. He saw the abundance that you and I aren't seeing with our physical eyes. And that's where we want to get more. We want to get to that place where we're able to go beyond this mind and ideas of lack and limitation, things that we've been handed throughout the course of our lives, and be able to know that we live and move and have our being in a realm of pure possibility and potentiality, that it's teeming. It is ever teeming with it, that there's never a lack. You can never use it up. You can never, there can never be so many people that are recognizing at the same time that there's not enough, there's no lack or limitation in this realm. And he said the problem that, Dennis says the problem is that from time, the beginning of time, that we have learned to struggle and to fight just to simply survive. And so it's kind of like, the sins are passed down from generation to generation. And so the next generation has said, you got to work hard, you got to fight, you got to struggle, there's going to be competition, there's never going to be enough. And our job is to wake up and to change that. To change it for the generations that are coming behind us, and to show them that there's something different for them. It doesn't have to be that, because it doesn't have to be that way. Michael Bernard Beckwith says there is a lie that acts like a virus in the mind of humanity, and that lie is that there's not enough good to go around. There's lack and there's limitation and there's just not enough. The truth is that there's more than enough to go around. Hear that. There's more than enough to go around. There is more than enough creative ideas. This is one of our greatest gifts, is the creative ideas that pour forth when we're focused on the abundance that we live and move and have our being in. There's more than enough power. There's more than enough love. Do you know that? There's more than enough love. There's more than enough joy. All of this begins to come through a mind that is aware of its own infinite nature. There is enough for everyone. If you believe it, if you can see it, if you act from it, it will show up for you, and that's the truth. So Dennis shares that he lives on a waterway, and that the waterway has afforded him some really great lessons in this idea of abundance. And so he said that what he noticed is that all of his neighbors' boats use the same water to float. And that the water doesn't just support the privileged or the big yachts, that the water supports everything from the kayak to the yacht, that all of them have equal rights to the surface of the water. And he says it's the same with the principle of abundance, because it's omnipresent. It means it's everywhere present all the time, and it does not only affect certain people. Hear that. It does not only affect certain people. It is not only there for certain people. It affects all of us because it is equally available to all of us at any and every given moment. Just that little shift in our consciousness can make a huge difference, to recognize it's equally available to all of us. Now, he says, of course, the size of the vessel is really a metaphor for the expanse of our consciousness. And so how like a larger boat is going to be deeper in the water, and a more expansive consciousness, we're going to be more deeply rooted in the greater realm of truth. And amazing things come out of being deeply, deeply rooted in that. So he says the great infinite ocean of abundance is the core idea in this first rule, remembering that you are one with the source of your good. How do we practice this? He says we practice this through mindfulness. And you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of us really practice mindfulness? I knew you. You teach mindfulness. Mindfulness, he says, is remembering to remember that the present moment, that's where our greatest gifts lie, is in the present moment. And that the universe is just waiting for us to show up so that it can bestow its opulence on us. And so he says, with mindfulness, we can practice emotional awareness, which is the next part of this, by paying attention to our feelings in the present moment. Our feelings will then reveal our deepest beliefs about abundance that may need to be identified and modified. And with mindfulness, we can challenge what he calls our BS system, our belief system, and call out outdated beliefs that don't support us in creating a prosperous life. Now, here's the thing. Generally, if we're not conscious, we have a true BS system, because it's all of that stuff that was passed down from generation to generation that really isn't based in truth with a capital T. And so we want to change our BS to bountiful source. We want our belief system to be totally, totally immersed and anchored in everywhere that I look is bountiful source. Okay, so rule number one is what is rule number one? Do you guys remember? It's a test. Thank you. Be one with life. Thank you. Through mindfulness. Rule number two is be aware that you live in an expanding universe. Now, he says that awareness and mindfulness are two different things. Mindfulness is bringing ourselves to the present moment. Awareness is when we start tapping into, again, what is going on inside of us in that present moment. Because the present moment is where the abundance lingers, and it's just waiting on our attention, awaiting on our command. So everywhere that we look, we can see that we live in an abundant universe. And so one of the things that he shared, and I love this because It's the recognition of how abundant everything is. Arthur Thomas, in his book, Abundance is Your Right, said the sun could contain 1 million planets the size of our Earth. Expansion of the known gives contact with stars that are large enough to hold 500 million suns. Think about that. The average galaxy contains 1 billion stars, while known space holds at least 100 million galaxies. The galaxy to which our Earth belongs comprises 100 million stars, with new stars forming. It is an expanding galaxy in an expanding universe which knows nothing about limitations or shortage. So my mind says, it makes sense to me that if there is a consciousness that is ever expanding and creative, and we have come forth from that ever-expanding creative consciousness, that we ourselves are here to expand our own individual universes. That's why we're here, to express and to expand and to create and to enjoy life. The scripture is, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And what does it say to do? To seek first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, which is the right use of that kingdom, and all of this will be added unto us. Because you know what? It was never about all of this. It never has been about all of this. And because we've been programmed, that's what we've been focused on. And so ours is to come back and in awareness really start expanding our consciousness on the abundance that we live and move and have our being in at this moment. Look at nature. When you go out, and this is part of your homework for this week, is look at how many leaves are on the tree, or the blades of grass, or the various flowers and their fragrances and their colors. And now we're going to get to see all of the beauty of the leaves that are turning. And how about the air that you breathe, the abundance of the air that you breathe? Be aware of the abundance that is all around us. And then in our own beingness, how many of us have a lot of thoughts? Yeah, so like, wow, the abundance of thoughts and the abundance that our eyes can see, the beauty that's all around us, the abundance of beautiful sounds that our ears can hear, aromas that we can smell, or that the flavors that our taste buds give us the opportunity to taste. But just to start really, through mindfulness, coming into the present moment and knowing, wow, everything is good. Everything I need is right here, right now for me. And the evidence is all around me. And so we live from this. And we don't live in lack. And here's the thing about awareness. When those lack thoughts come up, whether it's about health or relationships or the job or whatever it is, that we come back into the present moment. Wow, everything I need is right here, right now. I'm good, I'm okay. And look at the abundance all around me. That's your homework. That's easy, isn't it? But I want you to do it a lot. A lot. Because the way that we're going to shift our consciousness and ultimately our experience for good, not so that we hit another wall, but that we break through it and that wall is no longer there, is we do it over and over and over again. We make that the most important part of every day, that we're going to live in that awareness, okay? Deal? Okay, so we're going to close with an affirmation by Catherine Ponder. How many of us are familiar with Catherine Ponder? Longtime Unity minister that has all kinds of prosperity books. Michelle turns me on to this, and so let's share in this affirmation together. I attract whatever I radiate. I attract whatever I mentally choose and accept. I begin choosing and mentally accepting the highest and best in life. I now choose and accept health, success, and happiness. I now choose lavish abundance for myself and for all mankind. This is a rich, friendly universe, and I dare to accept its riches, its hospitality, and to enjoy them now. And so it is, and so it shall be. Namaste. Namaste.